David Jaramillo. I'd like to take a moment to introduce his introducer, his wife, Nikki.
Good afternoon. I just want to start by thanking everybody for being here and for allowing us to come and speak today. My name is Nikki Jaramillo, and my husband is David Anthony Jaramillo, congressional candidate for Texas 17. Next week, David and I will celebrate our 11th anniversary. During our time together, I have watched as David honorably served our country while in the Marine Corps. As a sergeant in the Marine Corps, I watched as he pushed his Marines to be the best, hard on them when needed, but also a compassionate mentor to them as well. I have seen him transform from a hardcore Marine to a loving father from the moment he held our first child. David was able to balance the roles as Marine to husband to father with ease. He has always sacrificed for our family and done whatever it takes to make sure his family is taken care of. He encourages myself and our kids to accomplish our dreams. When he isn't out campaigning, you can usually find him at a ball field with our children. Our daughter has a dream of playing college softball, and he pushes her every day to make sure that she's able to accomplish that dream one day. David is passionate, and when he believes in something, he sets his mind to it and won't stop until he has made a difference. Back in September, David came to me and said, "I want to run for Congress. I need to run for Congress." And I asked him, why? And he said, "We need better for our area and for our country, and I can't sit back and do nothing anymore." Without hesitation, I supported his decision. This was going to be a big change for us since he worked for the VA. He would have to quit his job before he could run due to the Hatch Act. I told him we would make it work, we would be okay, because I heard it in his voice and seen it in his eyes. This was something he was passionate about. I told him, "I believe in you, and I believe we will be able to accomplish great things in our area and our country as congressmen." In the past 6 months, since David has made the decision to run for Congress, I have watched him pour his heart into this. Every day he goes out and makes the effort to be involved in the communities of this district while still maintaining his roles as husband, father, and softball coach. My belief in the statement I first made to him grows stronger with every day. It is an honor to be able to introduce my husband and the best choice for our next congressman, David Anthony Jaramillo.
I was told that I'm able to have a friend come up here and introduce me, and who better than my best friend? The one who's been with me through thick and thin for 11 years now. Actually, over 11 years. So my name is David Anthony Jaramillo. I'm running for U.S. House Representatives for Texas 17th Congressional District. A little bit about me. I'm a second-generation Marine. My father served, and when he retired, we moved to Waco, and then Mart, where I met some of the most amazing people. My wife is from China Spring. She was born in Waco, and this is our home. We have strong ties here. We have seen the changes from good to bad, the lack of representation we have now. At 18 years old, I joined the Marine Corps. I was a sergeant, which it's hard to get to sometimes. But from there, I deployed to Iraq, and I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and give it another go. So I re-enlisted. From there, I was picked to be able to serve under the Obama administration at the White House Military Office, where I received a top secret Yankee White clearance, one of the highest clearances you can get in the Marine Corps, and a presidential service badge. And then, as luck would have it, I was invited to the Oval Office to meet President Obama. One of the best things I've ever done, other than my family, of course. Right now, in our country, we are done with just ideas. We can't have those ideas anymore. We need priorities. I'm running on healthcare for all, because you should not have to go broke to keep you or your family healthy. People here in McLennan County and around the nation are still having to put off to see the doctor because of co-pays. And then going to the doctor only to find out they have terminal illnesses that could have been taken care of if they went to the doctor before. It's unacceptable. prison reform. We need to shut down the for-profit prisons. We need to invest in rehabilitation, educational opportunities, on-the-job training. That way, when we release people back to society, they have all the opportunity to help themselves. I am running on immigration reform. I am tired of seeing children separated from their families, being treated worse than animals at the pound. This is something we need to stick together with. We need to fight it. As a father, too, I will not stand to see that any longer. I am running on VA benefits and health care reform because we have made a promise to our service members and our veterans that we would take care of them for serving. And we have faltered on that promise. It is time we make a change. It is time we stand united. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been throughout this district so many times, and it has been a humbling experience. I have learned so much more than I ever thought I would learn, and I'm still learning every day. But the biggest thing that I hear, wherever I go, is either vote blue no matter who, or we're standing united. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stand united. I want to thank every single one of you for being here. I want to thank every single one of you for taking an interest in politics, because it's not something everybody does. Our campaigns are nothing without you. And that I want to thank you for. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge every single one in here to get deputized, to be able to register people to vote. Because without you doing that, without everybody else doing that, it's going to be a fight. But we get to the places where we need to go, we can have more people than Republicans easily. I want to thank you again for allowing me to speak, and I look forward to talking to you afterwards. Thank you.
Our next speaker today is going to be Mr. Rick Kennedy, and to introduce him is Jackie Rhodes.
Thank you.
We are really fortunate to have such excellent candidates before all of us today. And I'd like to introduce you to one of them, which is Rick Kennedy. A lot of you know Rick, but some of you do not. Rick has been a software engineer and a project manager for about 35 years. And that work has given him the opportunity to solve complex problems in a complex environment. That kind of sounds like Congress to me, right? Complex solutions also. Okay. Rick has lived in the Central Texas area for about 14 years. He has 3 teenagers. One goes to Baylor, okay, in our midst. You may recall that Rick ran for the same position in the 2018 midterms. And he did that because he was very concerned about seeing where our country was headed. It was dysfunctional, becoming dysfunctional, and very divided. And I think those concerns have only grown. It's gotten worse over the years. And when Rick ran in 2018, he ran with an eye towards looking at 2020, okay? So he was laying the groundwork for this election today. And he feels like now he's got the groundwork laid. He has established contacts, built relationships, talked to thousands of voters, and with all that said, he's got the groundwork laid to flip this district in 2020. Okay. And I wanted to share with you, Rick does have the endorsement of the Austin American-Statesman, and I want to quote to you what they said about him. Rick has an easy fluency with the issues and a moderate approach that could draw independent voters. And many of you may have seen the recent interview with Rick in the Waco Tribune-Herald about 2 weeks ago. And what I want to tell you now is exactly what they said about Rick. This is a quote. Rick has the intellect, energy, and constitutional savvy needed for this position. And he is an old-fashioned democratic centrist with ideas, not ideology, end quote. And I'm sure he'll share some ideas with you today. And I've been told he carries around a pocket of the in his pocket the Constitution. Yep, there it is. There it is.
It's a flop.
Rick's focus is to work from a common ground perspective, not from extreme positions, and he wants to unite our country and make Texas and our country better for all generations to come. And one last thing about Rick. Rick has said, and I can't help but think we all agree with him, but it's time to elect a representative that listens to all the constituents, no matter what their viewpoints are. And we have not had that with our current representative, so it's time to elect someone who will listen to all of us. I introduce Rick to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for leaving out the part in the trib where they said that I don't have Beto's charisma, so thank you for leaving that out. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to the Texas Democratic Women for hosting us. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Rick Kennedy. I am a Democratic candidate for the United States Congress. And as Jackie said, I was the Democratic Party nominee for this seat in 2018. And I'm running now for the same reasons I ran then, only they're much worse. Congress is broken. Congress no longer serves the needs of the American people. Over the last 30 years, Congress has gradually walked away from many of its constitutional duties and has given up much of its power to the executive branch, and we can go into that a little bit more later. Sarah and I have 5 teenagers between us, which is scary enough just to say it. We got 5 teenagers between us, and rather than building a stronger and more united America, I'm convinced that we are about to hand off a diminished and divided America to our kids. And I cannot sit by and simply let that happen. I've crisscrossed Central Texas now for the last 2.5 years, and I've talked to people in every corner of this district. And despite the good numbers on our economy, we have real kitchen table issues with our health care, with economic security, with economic inequality, and with our infrastructure that we need to solve. And Congress has not been up to the task because too many of them are ideologues, opportunists, or just straight up publicity hounds looking to get their mugs in front of a TV camera. Now, I'm none of that. As Jackie said, I'm an engineer, kind of boring compared to those guys, right? I've been an engineer and a project manager for 35 years. I've held leadership positions in organizations like Lucent Technologies and Dell Computers, and I've led teams all over the world solving complex problems. And over the span of that career, I've learned that good ideas come from everywhere. So I'm not necessarily looking for a Democratic solution to our problems. I'm not looking for a Republican solution to our problems. I'm looking for effective and achievable solutions to our problems. And we got problems. The 21st century has not been easy for America. It started with 9/11, and we've been at war ever since. The Great Recession devastated millions of people, many of whom still haven't fully recovered. We've had rapidly changing immigration challenges, and escalating costs in housing, healthcare, and education have far outpaced working and middle-class wage growth. And through it all, Congress has managed to do almost nothing except become even more divided and more dysfunctional. So my priority as your congressman is going to be to steer the conversation away from that divisiveness and focus on smart solutions to keep our economy growing, but allow all of us to share in that growth, to extend health care to every American, and to give our rural communities the 21st century infrastructure they need to attract 21st century jobs. If you crisscross this district, you see such a stark contrast between Austin, Waco, Bryan College Station, and all the small towns in between, where main streets are nothing but boarded up storefronts. Okay, you've got to do something about that. The preamble of the Constitution lays out 6 reasons for the federal government to exist. 1 is aspirational, in order to form a more perfect union, right? The other 5 are actionable: to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, to promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. I would submit to you that we are doing 1 out of those 5 well right now. We do defense well, okay? We invest in it, we all benefit from it, we do it well. The other 4 we're falling down on, and 20% is a failing grade. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for change. It's time to replace the fear and the anger that are tearing this country apart with hope and optimism. It's time to replace partisanship with principled compromise and gridlock with progress on these issues and hundreds of more. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rick Kennedy. I have the skill set and the experience to be part of that change, and it would be an honor and a privilege to serve as your next congressman. And I pledge to you that as your representative in Washington, my loyalty won't be to political action committees, it won't be to the party, and it won't be to the president, whoever that might be. President Buttigieg, I don't know, it could be whoever the president might be. My loyalty will be to the country, the Constitution, and you, my constituents. Thank you very much for coming out this morning, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, we're going to move on to the question and answer period. We've got a list of questions submitted earlier. I'm going to ask each candidate the same question. They'll each have around 2 minutes to give their response. The first question is going to be for you, David. Red meaning, eeny, meeny, miny. Do you believe that convicted felons should be given the right to vote?
Once you've served your time, once you've paid your debt to society, you should have the right to vote. You're an American. Why are we hindering people from voting? To me, that sounds like clear voter suppression. And if you know what's happening around here, that is happening. Tenfold. Yes, I believe once you serve your debt to society, you have every right to vote. You have every right that the Constitution allows you. Thank you.
This is going to be one of those Democrat on Democrat debates where we both say the same thing. I agree that we absolutely, once your sentence is served, your debt to society is theoretically paid off, and full rights should be restored at that point. Part of the challenges that we face with the recidivism rate in this country is the fact that when folks do get out of prison, their full rights are not restored. Whether it's the box on the application form that asks, have you ever been convicted, or whether it's the right to vote and participate in our democratic process, these folks are not fully restored to their citizenship. So yes, I absolutely support restoring voting rights to convicted felons. I will qualify that. There could be situations where multiple convictions, etc., or convictions of particularly heinous crimes, repeat activities may disqualify that, but for 98% of the time, I'm guessing I would absolutely support restoration of full rights as citizens of the United States. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, the next question is going to be for you first. How can moderate Democrats persuade Republicans to join us in our efforts to provide affordable health care to all Americans?
I don't need my Sharpie for that. I can do this one off the top of my head. How can moderate Democrats persuade Republicans to come along with us and convince us that health care, or extending health care to all Americans, is a good thing to do? Over the last 2.5 years, I have talked to so many people on both sides of the aisle about this issue. And I will tell you, I believe, and I'll bet most of the people in this room believe, that health care is a right. Okay? We're Democrats, most people believe it. But that's not the way we win this argument, because if somebody else doesn't think it's a right, you're challenging their belief structure. Okay? What we need to do is convince them not that it's a right or that it's not a right, that it's good for America. That is an investment in our fellow Americans that will return value over the decades, over the generations to come. And the argument is, and with many people it's an economic argument, right? If we can get people covered, we reduce the cost of uncompensated care, which is killing our rural healthcare system, by the way. We reduce overall costs by getting people into primary care so that their conditions don't advance to a point where they wind up in the emergency room with kids with ear infections, right? The most expensive way to treat things. And healthier kids make healthier students. right? Healthier adults are more productive in the workplace. Healthier kids grow up to be healthier adults who are then more productive in the workplace. And parents of healthier kids lose less time out of the workplace because their kids don't stay home sick as often. These are compelling arguments for moderate Republicans and independents. If we convince them that it's an investment in our fellow Americans and that it's good for America in the long run, then they will come along. If we challenge them, they won't. Thank you.
Mr. Jaramillo, same question.
Believe it or not, I've talked to many Republicans about this issue. And the majority of Americans, Republican and Democrats, actually agree with Medicare for All, but they want some certain stipulations, things like that. So one of my biggest things is I want safety nets. I've worked for the federal government for 14 years. I know how it works. I know what they do. So what I want to do is have a baseline, and this will attract Republicans, a baseline of passing legislation with safety nets. So we're going to do protection for pre-existing conditions, which we have right now for the Affordable Care Act. However, that's going through the courts and that can be gone soon. So pass just that, nothing attached to it. Protection for pre-existing conditions, a low standardized price across the board. Obviously, there's going to be a locality for that. I mean, we're not going to have the same healthcare costs here in Waco as they do in San Diego. However, that right there is going to pull Republicans into this. One of the biggest things is the funding. And moderate Republicans will agree with this as well. What we need to do, and I've heard this, take that money they have allocated for the border wall. Invest it in our health care. Start taxing the top 10% of Americans that are making millions of dollars, and start taxing these big corporations.
Amazon.
I was going to say it, but these big corporations that aren't paying anything. That right there, when we are investing the money that's already allocated and bringing more money in, that right there will attract more Republicans. You're saying, hey, it's not coming out of your pocket now. It is coming from these big earners. Thank you.
Mr. Jaramillo, the immigration issue is complex, and the treatment of these groups of people is inhumane and heartbreaking. There are no easy solutions to this issue. What strategies can you suggest to improve our country's efforts to assist people who are seeking a safe and secure way of life in America?
One of the biggest things right now is the Remain in Mexico. That's got to go away. That has to go away because they are still being, extorted. They're being, murdered because we're keeping them over there. We need to give asylum seekers, for one, the same due process we have always given them. That's first off. Secondly, again, like I said before in my intro, we need to stop treating our children down there, or these children down there, worse than animals. This is ridiculous. What we need to do, and again, goes back to the border wall, is we need to take that money and invest it in more immigration judges. Last fiscal year alone, online, just online, they received 2.2 million applications. Again, that's just online. We have less than 500 immigration judges. And they're leaving because of the workload, which in turn is causing more of a backlog than we already have. We have people still waiting 2 decades to come legally into this country. Take that money again from the border wall and the top earners, hire more immigration judges, start tackling the backlog, start dispersing the applications throughout the United States instead of just one specific area. That right there will address the immigration issue. That right there will address how we're treating children. And that right there will address how we're treating asylum seekers. Thank you.
Our immigration situation is probably the epitome of an example of what motivated me to run for Congress and what I think one of the fundamental issues that we have, that we face. And that is that, again, Congress is dysfunctional. Congress has not tackled the most divisive issues that we have. And if you look at our history with immigration law, our immigration system has not been, we haven't had a comprehensive immigration reform since Ronald Reagan was in the White House, 1987. The world is a very different place now than it was in 1987. Scenarios have changed dramatically, and congressional action is required, because what you've got with Remain in Mexico, as David mentioned, or even with DACA, which are two sides of the coin. One is cruel, one is compassionate, but they're both executive orders trying to make up for the fact that Congress cannot get its act together and actually pass legislation to address this problem. So, in addition, of course, to adjudicating our asylum cases quickly and judiciously, we have to address the root causes of all of the forces that are driving people to try to enter this country illegally. There are three big root causes. There are three big groups that are coming across the border. Okay, those seeking economic migrants, seeking work, asylum seekers seeking safety, and of course, drug traffickers. 30 seconds. Wow. For asylum seekers, we of course have to adjudicate their cases quickly and appropriately, but we also need to address the root causes of why they're leaving their countries in the first place. For economic migrants, we need strong internal enforcement, mandatory E-Verify validation of the fact that people are authorized to work in this country. If they can't get a job, they won't come here illegally. And finally, we don't need a war on drugs, we need a war on addiction. If we reduce the addiction on our side of the border, we reduce the demand for the drugs, we reduce the pressure on the border, we weaken the cartels south of the border, and we enable our southern neighbors to better enforce the rule of law. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, we're going to give you the answer to the first question first. What would be your answer for expanding broadband coverage throughout the rural areas?
Yes. So I mentioned infrastructure as one of my main emphasis in my introduction. Broadband coverage, I think ubiquitous broadband coverage is critical at this point to helping our rural communities get bootstrapped and start to participate in this 21st century economy. It's very similar to a situation almost 100 years ago when we passed the Rural Electrification Act and we strung electricity to every farm in this country to allow them to, again, participate in what was the modern economy at that time. High-speed internet access is absolutely crucial to participating not only in our economy, but to accessing remote services. Lorna, last name is eluding me. Lorna Duke, thank you. Lorna Duke and I were having a conversation not so long ago about remote delivery of medical services to rural areas. All right? It requires high-speed internet access. So it's absolutely critical to evening out our economy. A lot of our presidential candidates talk about economic inequality, and they're talking about what I call vertical economic inequality, the difference between the top 1/10 of 1% and the rest of us. I like to think of horizontal economic inequality, and that means the difference between what's happening in our rural counties versus what's happening in our urban counties. And if you look at the history, back in 2000, the rural counties that voted for George Bush accounted for 46% of our GDP. If you look at the counties that voted for Donald Trump in 2016, they accounted for only 36% of our GDP. There's a massive shift in economic activity away from our rural counties to our urban and suburban counties. It's the root cause of a lot of this anger and angst between us, and it has to be addressed, and high-speed internet access is part of it.
I'm from Mark, Texas, where we have more cornfields than we do houses for the most part. The thing is, this is not an isolated issue. You have parts of Burleson County who want faster internet. You have parts of McLennan County and Limestone County. We have federal programs right now that address broadband expansion. Unfortunately, it's not well funded. You have to apply for it, you gotta know about it. I hear this so often, people trying to get, for example, phone lines at their houses down in the country. And that's the same process. We need to promote this for one, fund it, because we have younger people who are, you know, whether or not they're working on the farms or they're staying at home to save money, they want to go to college. They want to be able to obtain that degree, so once they move out of their house, they're able to get a good job. Now, the biggest thing is distance learning. We have that here in McLennan County. We have it through Tarleton. We have it through all these universities. They should be able to do that from the comfort of their own homes. But unfortunately, because this program is not well funded, it is hard for them to do it. You can't be doing it on dial-up internet. With the broadband, I had the opportunity to work from home when I worked for the VA. It was great, but the only thing is, you can have satellite internet, which is very spotty as it is, and you can't have, again, dial-up. You have to have full-on broadband. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to invest more money in these programs. We need to get the word out that makes sure that these grants are given to these rural areas. Thank you.
Okay, this is going to be the last question. Mr. Jaramillo, what is your position on the decriminalization of marijuana, particularly the use of medical marijuana?
To be honest, this does not come up as often as I thought it would. I support legalization. I'm also not one to drink, so I don't find the appeal to it. However, what's going on right now with marijuana is the full force of the law is being applied to our minority areas. And which is in turn funding these for-profit prisons. I do support it. I do want it to be treated like alcohol you have to do in certain areas. You can't drive with it. And you have to be of age. Now, medical marijuana, and a family member who I would never have thought would say this, actually said, I'd rather not be on pills, I'd rather smoke marijuana. And that right there, that surprised me. I'm like, okay, well maybe this is a good thing. Because right now we have an opioid epidemic. Why wouldn't we want a non-habit forming, all-natural plant that would help you with your pain, your appetite if you're going through cancer treatments? Why wouldn't we want that? Why are we still feeding into the big pharmaceutical companies and pushing these pills out? I, for one, support the end of prohibition. Thank you.
Yeah, I too now support decriminalization of certainly medical marijuana. That should have happened years ago, as well as general use marijuana at this point. It's a component not only of criminal justice reform as part of, and should be part of overall sentencing reform as well. It's also a component, as I mentioned earlier, about reducing the pressure on our southern border. And it's an experiment that we are going to go through regardless. I don't even know the number of states at this point. I think it's 16, it's more than 16 states have legalized marijuana. And that's how things happen at the national level. The states try things and we experiment, and when enough states have adopted a new policy, then it gets adopted at the federal level. And I think at this point it is time to adopt it at the federal level. The benefits will be, again, criminal justice reform as well as easing the pressure on our southern border. We'll have to monitor, of course. There are social costs on both sides of this coin. It's much like prohibition of alcohol, where we experimented with that for a few years, and we decided that the organized crime activity that emerged out of prohibition of alcohol was a larger social cost than the consumption of alcohol, the legal consumption of alcohol. We're in the middle of that same conversation right now with marijuana. It's time to legalize it at the federal level, monitor it, regulate it, figure out how we can keep people off the road with it, which we can't do right now, unfortunately, and then figure out what the net, which has the more social cost, and adjust appropriately. So, thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I want to thank the candidates for this morning. I want to thank the candidates for coming. At this time, we're going to allow the candidates each 2 minutes to give a closing statement, and then there will be a few minutes for everyone to.
Then it's a free-for-all.
And yeah, we're going to start with Mr. Kennedy.
Okay. I'd like to close with a little perspective over the last 2.5 years, how things have changed in this election cycle, what opportunities we have in this election cycle, and what barriers we face, and really what this election cycle means. So, David and I have had the pleasure, the luck of participating in televised forums on KWTX, KBTX, Texas A&M, KAMU, etc. This level of interest from the media, as well as the general public, Dale and I would have killed for 2 years ago, right? The fact that we have been in rooms with our Republican colleagues on the other side, that we have had the media coming after us, indicates a sea change in the level of interest. And of course, it's all because Mr. Flores announced his retirement. That leads into the opportunities that we have in this cycle, okay? We have an opportunity to win this seat.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I've seen all the Republican candidates. I've talked, whose name? I talked.
Sorry.
With Republican voters. We were in a room last night. We each gave our 3-minute speech. There was not a single Democratic voter in that room. Right? But we were delivering our message to Republican voters. There's not an opportunity we had last time around. So we have to be able to take advantage of this opportunity and capitalize on it, because the threat that we face is, and can I be blunt, it's Pete Sessions for the next decade. Because if Mr. Sessions wins through and we don't win the House at the state level, they'll redistrict him in for the next decade, okay? So it's critical that we make the right choices right now. And it's critical that we all get behind whoever the nominee is. Because even if it isn't Mr. Sessions, it's gonna be somebody who can beat Pete Sessions, which means it's gonna be even worse, okay? It's gonna be a huge battle, it's a huge rock to push up a big hill. But I've got a new data team on board, and we've got a path to victory. It can be done. It's going to take all of us. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my home, and I'll be damned if I see it treated this way any longer. I'm sorry for the language. I am campaigning on priorities. My priorities will help this district and the nation. I have a vision for our district, that of unity and equality for all. I have went to the forgotten areas of our district, which is minority areas and LGBTQ. And I've heard so many times saying we've been forgotten. I told them, I made them a promise. I said, you are not forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative, like I said before in my opening, that you get deputized. You register people to vote. You back the nominee, whoever it might be. Because like Mr. Kennedy said, we don't want Pete Sessions. We don't want a small house. We want a Democrat. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again for being here, for taking interest. I want to thank you again, because again, like I said before, without you, we are nothing. We're just two people up here yelling and talking. But it's you who make this all possible. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, gentlemen, so
I know that all of you will agree with me that it is such a pleasure for our district to have these two Democratic candidates running for our benefit and the benefit of our Central Texas area and the state of Texas. We are going to have time for them to visit with you. We have several people who want to visit with you, I know, but I would like to give a couple of minutes to several people here today. First of all, our McLennan County Democratic Party Chair, Mary Judy, asked for...
Oh, yes, I did, didn't I? Ready, set, go?
Ready, set, go.
Okay.
Timer.
2 minutes.
Oh, you got 2 minutes? Okay.
But I can do this.
Oh, okay.
This is what is so critical. We have similar tastes in clothing. Well, I'll have to get a picture taken later. Guys, this is the one. This is the one. Go home and look at your grandkids. Look at your kids. Look at what you want to have for your future. Who's going to be taking care of you when you get older? It's that big a deal. And I tell you what, I'm an idiot. I don't see where's Dustin. I don't teach science, Dustin. But I tell you what I do. I know that a fire starts at the bottom. You don't light a fire at the top. You know, it doesn't happen. The fire starts in communities, on county commissioner races, on Senate district races, and House district races. It's not necessarily who's going to be president. We could survive, maybe, 4 more years of being president. Maybe. I don't even want to consider that. But I tell you what, if the wedges that are being driven between us by the powers that be in whatever place they are, I'm sorry, I'm getting close, I know. We can't let them put those wedges between us. Because when it's all said and done and everything falls apart, we're going to be in this community trying to put this community back together. And it's going to be us working together and finding common ground and finding a way to work together for the betterment of our little place on the earth. And I say, the fire starts at the bottom, and the fire is in this room. The fire is in this room.
Also, we have a few words from our Senate District Committee woman, Senator Tammy Hartgrove.
Besides being past president of TDW, your treasurer, I have the privilege and pleasure of serving Senate District 22 on the State Democratic Executive Committee. That means I represent you and 9 other counties to the Texas Democratic Party. 4% is what Beto lost by. If we get our rural counties out to vote, we win in 2020. That's walking, that's phone calling, registering people to vote for November. Y'all, we can make a difference. It only takes a spark to get that fire going. And I hope we can light a spark in everyone, because change has got to come. We already know Russia is working in our primaries. Just wait until they get to the general, folks.
Right.
Catherine Turner Pearson, District 56. 2 minutes.
Hi guys. I want to thank you guys so much, because every time I come here I feel so much love and caring from all of you, and it helps pump me up, I'll tell you right now. We have a lot of really good candidates and a lot of good races here on the Democratic side, and that's real exciting. I want us to remember, reiterate what Mary was saying. When this primary is over, we have to join together and support the nominees up and down the ballot, no matter who they are. And we can do this together. And I just want to remember, we're all friends here. We love all our candidates. We've got too many good choices up and down that ballot. But from president down, we all are going to join together, right?
Right.
And then I have a personal ask for you. rural area this time. So if you live in a rural area, come see me. I need your help, and I'll tell you how. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to wind up so that you can visit and with everyone who has an interest in talking to you today, which all of us do. First of all, I would like to tell you that on the table over here is a little bit of inspiration created by our own Abby Sebastian.
Abby! Oh, Abby Sebastian!
Our Louisiana transplant, hence Mardi Gras back here. Thank you for the refreshments, Abby. We appreciate it very much. But pick up this sheet as you go out. I think you'll like it very much. On your agenda and on our website and on our Facebook page and on the McLennan County Democrat Facebook page, you have events coming up. They don't always show up on your page. So let me remind you, this Wednesday, our fourth Wednesday lunch bunch. You're always invited fourth Wednesdays. This time, this February, we're meeting at George's 2 in Hewitt at 11:30. So be there if you would like to just Dutch treat lunch and cuss and discuss. Okay?
It's important.
February 29th, next Saturday, and next Sunday, March 1st, the McLennan County Democratic Party has Days of Action. If you will give the office a call, Peter or Susan will tell you what you can do, whether it's making phone calls, whether it's doing some block walking. It's volunteer work, that grassroots stuff, lighting those sparks. So if you can do that, please let them know next week. As you can see, there's a long list of things. Make sure that anyone you know that hasn't voted yet does get to the polls to vote. March 3rd, primary voting. Our March 14th regular meeting will be here in this room, and we will have Royce Brooks from Annie's List. Who will be here. A very inspiring. We're excited to have her come from Austin that day. And not only that, but on March 14th, Saturday, the Texas Democratic Party, for the first time, is coming to a rural area, and yes, Waco is still considered rural, to have their state Democratic Executive Committee meeting. You might not have ever been to one, but they're interesting, they're informative, it's fun, and Mary Duty will need some help in hosting that on March 13th and 14th here in Waco. We'll have at least 150 or so people here from across the state, and speakers and opportunities. So check on that with us if you have that Saturday free, but we will have our meeting here at 11. The SDEC starts at 8 o'clock that morning, and as soon as we're finished with our meeting here, we can go over and catch the afternoon.
Yeah, you can get the general session for sure
in
the PAC.
So, there is a whole list of other things that we're doing. Don't forget your March 21st Saturday convention. You vote in a primary, and then you go to convention to carry through your party responsibilities at the county convention. Information on that on the county page and the TDP page. Anything else for the good of the order?
Besides all my hollow platitudes, the number is 301-7648. We got plenty of places for you to volunteer, to do as little or as much as you want to do. We're not getting candidate specific till we get past the primary, but then we're ready to roll after that as far as supporting candidates. But feel free to volunteer where you can.
All right.
You'll never regret it.
I have the square if anyone.
Yes, if you would like to join TDW today, if you haven't already, see Tammy Hartgroves, our treasurer. Two final things. Tuesday, February 25th at 6 o'clock p.m., we have the McLennan County Democratic Party CEC meeting. That's the business meeting. We have to do it. Everyone is welcome. You can't talk during this because you're not, unless you're a precinct chair, but you get information and what have you, so you're welcome to come to that. It will be at the Aaron Baker Shank Law Offices at, 19th and Austin Avenue. And then immediately following that, Aaron Shank is hosting the debate watch party in her big room with the big television. Okay, so that's this Tuesday. And finally, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here today. I want to say thank you to the members who are present, who worked all of last year and made TDW of Central Texas the success that it was. We did receive an Outstanding Chapter Award.
Yes, we did.
At our last and also we awarded 4 Star Awards at our state convention. And if those Star Award recipients who are here would stand up, Jim Prince, Sharon Chandler, Tom Hansen, Tina Hackler.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. And now, if candidates want to go to their corners or whatever, we need to be out of this room by 1 o'clock, so we've got time.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.